The neon lights of New York City glittered through the colossal glass windows of Avengers Tower. In the main briefing room, 5 core members were discussing a newly emerged threat in Harlem. Tony Stark, with his perfectly groomed beard, was projecting analytical data. Steve Rogers stood beside him, arms crossed, his expression solemn. Thor leaned back in his chair, Mjolnir resting by his side. Natasha Romanoff and Clint Barton stood in the corner of the room, their eyes alert as ever. Rain poured relentlessly over New York. Each icy drop mingled with blood and grime on Spider-Man's tattered red and blue suit. Peter Parker gasped for air, struggling to stand steady on the rooftop of the Oscorp building. The battle with the Green Goblin had just ended, but the price paid was too high. Norman Osborn had been defeated, but before collapsing, he had activated one final device, a large-scale biometric scanner. The moment Peter pulled down his torn mask to breathe, hundreds of security cameras within a 2-kilometer radius captured his face, and now that image was spreading at lightning speed across every media outlet. No, it can't be. Peter stammered, staring at his phone screen. His face, a young man of just 23 with messy brown hair and panicked eyes, was displayed on the front page of the Daily Bugle. The headline flashed across the screen. Spider-Man revealed. Who is the man behind the mask? Uncle Ben, Aunt May. I'm sorry, Peter whispered, his tears blending with the rain. But the worst was yet to come. A familiar sound echoed in the sky, the whine of Iron Man's thrusters. Peter's heart tightened as he saw not 1, but 4 suits of armor landing on the rooftop. Tony Stark, in the Mark 85 armor, stepped out from the blinding floodlights. All right, kid, Tony's voice came through the vocal filters, cold and authoritative. Game over. We need to talk. Peter took a step back, his eyes wide. Mr. Stark, I can explain. Explain later. War Machine landed beside Tony, his shoulder cannon primed. For now, you're coming with us. S.H.I.E.L.D. wants to know how you've hidden your identity all this time and what else you're hiding. No, I can't. Aunt May, my friends, everyone will be in danger, Peter shouted, his voice thick with desperation. That's not your choice, Tony replied, reaching out a hand. Come with me, Peter Parker. The name was uttered like a knife to Peter's heart. They knew everything. In that moment, Peter's survival instinct took over. He couldn't let them catch him, not now, not like this. There were still too many people to protect, too many secrets to keep. His spider sense blared in his head. Peter leaped backward, fired a web at the opposite building, and swung away before Tony could react. Pursue him, War Machine roared, and the 4 suits took flight simultaneously. New York City had never witnessed a pursuit quite like this. Spider-Man hurtled between skyscrapers, his webbing firing continuously to create a complex lattice of lines. The rain made the webs heavy and slick, but Peter knew this terrain all too well. Spider-Man, stop now, Tony's voice boomed from behind. You're only making things worse. Peter didn't answer. He abruptly changed direction, looping around Stark Tower before diving headlong into the Lincoln Tunnel. The 4 suits followed in hot pursuit, but their sheer bulk made maneuvering difficult in such a confined space. Rhodey, cut him off, Tony commanded. War Machine accelerated, flanking toward the tunnel's alternate exit. But Peter had anticipated the move. Just as he was about to exit, he suddenly shot a web at the ceiling and yanked himself upward, sticking flat against it. War Machine streaked past underneath, unable to stop in time. I've lost him, Rhodey shouted. Where'd he go? Peter dropped down silently and sprinted back into the tunnel, right toward the 3 remaining suits. He slid through a narrow gap between them, webbing the sensor array of one suit, causing it to lose its orientation and slam into the wall. Damn it, Tony cursed. He's faster than I thought, but the victory was short-lived. As Peter emerged from a different tunnel exit, he found himself facing the 2 people he least wanted to see, Black Widow and Hawkeye. Natasha Romanoff stood atop a truck, her red hair soaked with rain, but her gaze remains razor-sharp. Clint Barton already had his bow drawn, a specialized arrow aimed directly at Peter. Game over, Spider-Kid, Natasha said, her voice calm yet lethal. Don't make us hurt you. Peter gasped for air, searching for an escape route. But before him stood the 2 most highly trained agents in the world, and behind him, the roar of the incoming armored suits grew louder. I don't want to fight you guys, Peter said, his voice trembling. Please, I just want to protect the people I love. By running away? Clint spoke up. You think you can hide from the Avengers forever? Peter took a deep breath. He closed his eyes, letting his spider sense guide him. Then, in a split second, he sprang into action. Clint's arrow whistled past his ear, but Peter had already tilted his head to dodge. He leapt into the air, caught a second arrow with a web line, and whipped it back at Clint, forcing the archer to dive out of the way. Natasha lunged into the fray with precise strikes, but every kick and punch seemed to be predicted by Peter before they even landed. "Spider sense," Natasha muttered, blocking a counter kick from Peter. "I've read about it, but I've never seen it in person." Peter didn't want to hurt her. He played purely on the defensive, dodging and weaving, searching for a gap to vanish. But Natasha was too skilled. She forced him into a corner where he had to strike back. "If you won't surrender," Natasha said, drawing an electric baton, "we'll have to use force. This is your last choice, kid." Then, a voice rang out that brought everything to a standstill. "Enough." Captain America stepped out from the shadows, his shield gleaming under the streetlights. Steve Rogers looked at Peter not with hostility but with a strange sense of understanding. "Everyone, stand down," Steve ordered. "Let me talk to him." "I'm not an enemy," Peter said, his voice weak. "I never was." Steve nodded, placing his shield on the ground in a gesture of goodwill. "I know. I've been watching you for years, Peter. Ever since you started in Queens, with nothing but that homemade red and blue pajama suit." Peter was stunned. You knew?" "Not everything, but enough to know you're a good man." Steve stepped closer. "But you have to understand, after everything that happened with Sokovia, with the registration of enhanced individuals, we can't let anyone operate outside the lines, not even those with the best intentions. I don't want to register because it puts everyone I love in danger." Peter broke down. "Uncle Ben died because I didn't act. Aunt May is all I have left, if she gets hurt because my identity is exposed." Steve went silent for a moment. In his eyes, Peter saw a familiar pain, the pain of a soldier who had lost too much. "I lost the person I loved because of war," Steve said slowly. "I understand the fear of losing family, but running away isn't the solution, Peter. Let us protect them. Let the Avengers help you." "Help me?" Peter laughed bitterly. "By hunting me down like a criminal?" At that moment, Iron Man and War Machine landed behind Steve. Black Widow and Hawkeye had also regained their footing, ready for a fight. Peter was surrounded on all sides. "Steve, don't go soft," Tony said, his voice tense. "He could be dangerous. We still don't know the full extent of his capabilities." "I'm not dangerous." Peter hesitated, but then he realized there was no other way. "Fine, you all want to see what I can really do? Here." And Peter stopped holding back. He was no longer fighting like someone trying to escape. He fought like someone protecting something sacred. His speed multiplied. His strength, the very strength he had always suppressed for fear of hurting others, was finally unleashed. He leapt up, firing a massive web that pinned War Machine firmly against a wall. Rhodey struggled in vain. Black Widow and Hawkeye lunged simultaneously, but Peter moved too fast. He slid between them, webbed Clint's wrist to yank the bow from his hand, and used the bow itself to parry Natasha's attack. "I'm sorry," Peter yelled, as a punch into the wall beside Natasha created a massive crater. "I don't want to hurt you, but I can't let you catch me." Tony charged in, firing a series of repulsor blasts. But Peter vaulted into the air, spinning 3 times before landing directly on the shoulders of Tony's armor. He anchored himself with webbing and, using every ounce of his raw strength, ripped a plating off the arm, exposing the internal wiring. "This kid," Tony roared, trying to shake Peter off. But Peter was too quick. He had already leaped to the next suit, then the next, disabling their control systems one by one. Steve stepped in, his shield whistling through the air. Peter caught it with one hand, an act that left everyone paralyzed with shock. No one caught Captain America's shield, yet he had just done it, with his bare hands. You're much stronger than I thought," Steve admitted, his eyes filled with astonishment. "Have you been holding back this whole time?" "I don't want to hurt anyone," Peter said, returning the shield. "I've always been afraid that if I used my full strength, I'd become a monster." And then, a bolt of lightning struck down between them. Thor landed with Mjolnir in hand, lightning flickering around his body. Beside him, Hulk let out a furious roar, his muscles rippling as if ready to tear everything apart. This was no longer a pursuit, it was a real war. "I have heard of a young warrior who dares to defy the Avengers," Thor said, his voice booming like thunder. "Show me how you live up to that reputation." Peter knew he couldn't defeat Thor and Hulk at the same time, but he also knew he didn't have to win, he just had to survive. Hulk lunged first, his punch like a collapsing mountain. Peter leaped up, using his web to latch onto Hulk's arm and swung behind the green giant's back. He knew Hulk was many times stronger than him, but agility was his true weapon. Peter moved constantly, causing Hulk to miss punch after punch, destroying nearby vehicles and walls. "Stay still, little spider," Hulk roared. "I don't think so," Peter replied, then fired a web into Hulk's eyes, temporarily disorienting him. But Thor was ready. A bolt of lightning struck Peter directly, sending him flying backward, his body smoking. The pain was excruciating, but Peter still managed to stagger to his feet. "You can't win, kid," Tony said, his voice softening slightly. "Stop before you get hurt any worse." "No," Peter screamed, tears streaming down his face. "I've already lost too much. I can't lose anything more." He stood up, fists clenched. And in that moment, Peter Parker did something no one expected. He charged straight at Thor, not to attack, but to pull him into a desperate embrace. "I'm not an enemy," Peter sobbed. "I'm just a kid from Queens trying to do the right thing." Uncle Ben said that with great power comes great responsibility. And I've tried to live by that every single day. Please, please don't make me fight you anymore. The entire battlefield fell silent. Thor, the god of thunder, looked down at the young man clinging to him, and he saw not a warrior, not a threat, but a terrified child trying to protect what was left of his family. "Stop," Thor said, his voice dropping low. "Everyone, stop." He placed a hand on Peter's shoulder, and instead of throwing him off, he gently disentangled him. "This child speaks the truth," Thor declared. "His heart is pure. I can feel it." Hulk, though still angry, slowly calmed down. He grumbled, "Tiny spider, not bad guy." Tony removed his armor's faceplate. For the first time during the pursuit, Peter saw his real face, and it wasn't angry. It was full of regret. "Peter," Tony stepped forward. I'm sorry. We were so afraid of what you could become that we forgot to look at who you actually are." Steve placed a hand on Tony's shoulder. "We were wrong. He isn't a threat. He is exactly what the Avengers should be, a true hero, fighting not for fame or power, but out of responsibility." Peter stood among the Avengers, his body covered in wounds and his suit in tatters, yet his eyes remained bright. He had fought the Earth's mightiest heroes, and he was still standing. Did I win?" Peter asked, his voice trembling. "No one wins in a fight like this, kid." Natasha stepped forward, handing him a cloth to wipe his face. "But you proved one thing: you deserve respect. So, you won't arrest me anymore?" Tony sighed. "We need to have a serious talk about protecting your identity. With your face exposed, your Aunt May is in danger. But we will help. All of us. Really." Peter's eyes lit up. On one condition, Tony smiled the first smile since the pursuit began. "You join the Avengers. Not as a recruit, but as a full member. We need someone to remind us of the real reason we fight." Peter looked around. Captain America nodded. Thor smiled. Black Widow and Hawkeye stood with their arms crossed, their gazes full of respect. Even Hulk grunted in agreement. I don't know what to say." Peter choked up. "Then don't say anything," Tony patted his shoulder. "Let's go home, kid. Aunt May must be worried sick." And as dawn began to break over New York City, Peter Parker Spider-Man walked among the world's most powerful heroes. No longer the hunted, but an acknowledged warrior. He had won. Not through strength, but through heart. Because in the end, that is what truly makes someone a hero. And on the horizon, a new day began. The first day, Spider-Man no longer had to hide himself from his comrades. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Remember to subscribe to the channel. Thank you all very much.